The stars burned cold and distant in the viewing screen of the Eternal Fang. Admiral Threxus stood with his 4 arms crossed behind his back, his dark eyes scanning the holographic display that floated before him. Each glowing sphere represented a world that belonged to the Velkorian Empire. There were hundreds of them now scattered across this spiral arm of the galaxy like jewels on black velvet. He clicked his mandibles together in satisfaction. 200 years of conquest had brought the Empire to this moment of glory. Every species that had stood against them had fallen. Some quickly, some slowly, but all had fallen in the end. The Velkorians were simply better at war than anyone else in the known galaxy. Commander Velna approached from the tactical station, her footsteps making soft clicking sounds on the metal floor. She was young for her rank, barely 30 cycles old, but she had proven herself in a dozen campaigns. Her scales were still bright green, not yet dulled by age and battle scars like his own. "Admiral, the latest reports from Sector 12, she said, holding out a data tablet. Threxus took the device and scanned the information. The crystalline collective had surrendered. 3 days of orbital bombardment had been enough to convince them that resistance was pointless. Their cities of living crystal now lay in ruins, and their leadership had agreed to every term the Empire demanded. "Excellent," he said. "Have the occupation forces landed yet?" "Yes, Admiral. They report no significant resistance. The collective's military has been completely disbanded. Within a month, their industrial capacity will be integrated into the Empire's war machine." Threxus nodded. It was always the same pattern. First came the warnings, ignored by foolish leaders who thought their people special or their defenses adequate. Then came the fleet, 10,000 warships moving as one unstoppable force. Then came the bombardment, precise and devastating. And finally came the surrender, when the conquered species realized that survival meant submission. The Empire had refined this process over 2 centuries. They did not seek to destroy civilizations, only to control them. A conquered world could prosper under Velkorian rule, as long as it obeyed, paid its tributes, and contributed its soldiers to future campaigns. Many species had even come to appreciate the order and stability the Empire provided. But some species had to learn the hard way. The crystallines had been stubborn, believing their silicon-based biology made them somehow superior to carbon-based life. Now they understood that superiority was measured in warships and firepower, not in the chemistry of one's cells. Threxus walked closer to the holographic display and gestured with one clawed hand. The map zoomed out, showing a wider view of the galaxy. Most of it glowed amber, the color of Imperial control. But there were still gray areas, unexplored regions where no Velkorian ship had yet traveled. One gray section caught his attention, Sector 447. It was marked as unknown territory, but intelligence reports suggested there was something there. Long-range sensors had detected signs of civilization. Radio signals, heat signatures from populated worlds, ship movements, though not many. "What do we know about this region?" he asked, pointing at the gray area. Commander Velna consulted her own tablet. Sector 447. Intelligence believes it is inhabited by a species calling themselves humans. They have approximately 30 colonized worlds, all clustered in a relatively small area. Population estimates range between 50 and 80 billion individuals. Military strength? Unknown, Admiral. We have detected no large fleet movements, no orbital defense platforms, no significant military infrastructure. They appear to maintain only basic patrol craft for system security. Threxus felt his mandibles spread in what passed for a Velkorian smile. A weak species, then. Perhaps they had avoided contact because they knew they could not compete with the greater powers of the galaxy. That was wise in a way, but ultimately futile. The Empire would reach them eventually. "Have they responded to our standard contact protocols?" he asked. Velna shook her head. "No, Admiral. We have sent 7 different communication attempts over the past 2 years. All have been ignored. They do not seem interested in diplomatic relations, or they are simply too primitive to understand what is being offered to them," Threxus said. He studied the map more carefully. 30 worlds was not a large empire by galactic standards, but it was enough to provide valuable resources and soldiers, and their location was strategically useful, sitting on the edge of explored space. The Admiral made his decision. "Prepare the fleet for a new campaign. We will bring enlightenment to Sector 447. Velna's eyes widened slightly. "The entire fleet, Admiral? For such a small target?" Threxus clicked his mandibles. Why not? The crystallines are pacified. We have no other active campaigns at the moment. And overwhelming force ensures quick surrender. The humans will see our armada and understand immediately that resistance is impossible. We will have their territory integrated within a month. As you command, Admiral, Velna said, bowing slightly before returning to her station. Threxus remained at the viewing screen, watching the stars. He had commanded the Eternal Fang for 20 years, leading it through dozens of successful campaigns. He had seen species beg for mercy and others fight to the last warrior. He had witnessed the destruction of entire fleets and the surrender of proud empires. Nothing in this galaxy could surprise him anymore. The humans would be just another entry in the Empire's long list of conquests. They would resist at first, perhaps out of pride or ignorance. Then they would see the futility of fighting. Then they would kneel. It was the natural order of things. Around him, the bridge crew began their preparations. Officers called out status reports. Technicians verified weapon systems. Navigators plotted jump coordinates. The Eternal Fang was the largest warship ever built by the Velkorian Empire, measuring over 6 kilometers from bow to stern. Its weapons could crack a planet's crust. Its shields could withstand sustained bombardment from an entire enemy fleet, and it was just one ship among 10,000. The full might of the Imperial Armada would descend upon human space like a storm from the void. Threxus had no doubt about the outcome. Within the hour, orders went out across the fleet. Battle groups assembled. Supply ships loaded provisions. Troop transports prepared their soldiers for deployment. The great machine of Velkorian conquest began to move, turning its attention toward a small cluster of worlds where a species called humanity lived in quiet isolation. Threxus watched it all from his command throne, his forearms resting comfortably on the armrests. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. After this campaign, there would be few unexplored regions left in this part of the galaxy. The Empire would be truly dominant, unchallenged and unchallengeable. He had no way of knowing that he was making the greatest mistake of his long military career. He had no way of knowing that the humans were not weak or primitive or afraid. He had no way of knowing that their silence had been strategic, not fearful. Most importantly, he had no way of knowing that humanity had spent 400 years preparing for exactly this moment. While the Velkorians conquered world after world, the humans had been watching, learning and building something the galaxy had never seen before. But Threxus would learn soon enough. They all would. The diplomatic shuttle was small and unarmed, painted white with blue markings that identified it as belonging to the human stellar navy. It approached the Eternal Fang slowly, following the precise flight path that Velkorian traffic control had provided. Inside, Ambassador Jiwan Park sat calmly in the passenger seat, reviewing her notes one final time. She was 63 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a simple bun and dark eyes that had witnessed more than most people would see in 2 lifetimes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years, serving humanity in negotiations with a dozen different species. But this meeting was different. This meeting would determine whether billions of people lived or died. The pilot, a young ensign named Teho, glanced back at her. "Ambassador, we are approaching the docking bay. Are you ready?" Jiwan nodded. "As ready as I can be." She had requested this meeting as soon as human sensors detected the Velkorian fleet massing at the border. It had taken 3 days of continuous communication before Admiral Threxus agreed to see her. 3 days during which the alien armada had grown larger and more threatening. Now there were 10,000 warships positioned just outside human space, waiting for the order to attack. The shuttle settled into the docking bay with a gentle thump. Jiwan stood, smoothing her simple black suit, and walked to the airlock. When it opened, she found herself facing 4 Velkorian soldiers in full battle armor. They were tall, nearly 3 meters each, with scales that gleamed under the harsh lights. Each carried weapons that could probably cut through the shuttle's hull. "Ambassador Park," one of them said in heavily accented but understandable English. "You will follow us." Jiwan walked between the guards as they led her through the massive ship. The corridors were wide and tall, built for beings much larger than humans. The walls were dark metal, decorated with what she assumed were battle honors and unit insignias. Velkorian crew members stopped to stare as she passed. She supposed a human was a rare sight aboard an Imperial warship. They reached a large chamber with curved walls and a high ceiling. At the far end sat Admiral Threxus on a raised platform that served as his command throne. He was older than the soldiers. his scales darker and marked with scars from old wounds. His forearms were folded across his broad chest, and his dark eyes studied her with what might have been curiosity or contempt. Commander Velna stood beside him, her hand resting on the grip of her sidearm. The message was clear. Ji-Wan was here on sufferance, and any wrong move would be her last. Ambassador Park, Threxus said, his voice deep and resonant. You requested this meeting. Speak. Ji-Wan walked forward until she was close enough to be heard clearly, but not so close as to seem threatening. She kept her hands visible and her posture respectful but not submissive. Diplomacy was about small gestures and careful balance. Admiral Threxus, she began, her voice steady. I come to you with a request for peace. We have watched your empire expand across 17 star systems in the past 17 months. We understand your strength. We know what you are capable of doing. But I ask you on behalf of my people to turn your fleet away from our borders. Threxus clicked his mandibles in what might have been amusement. And why would I do that? Because war is not necessary, Ji-Wan said. We are willing to establish trade agreements. We can offer resources and technology in exchange for peace. There is no need for bloodshed between our peoples. The Admiral leaned forward slightly. Your scans of my fleet tell you that you cannot win a military confrontation. You have no comparable armada. Your orbital defenses are minimal. Your colonies are scattered and vulnerable. So you come here to beg. I come here to offer an alternative, Ji-Wan replied calmly. War benefits neither of us. We lose our people and our worlds. You lose soldiers and resources in a campaign that gains you little. Trade and cooperation benefit both parties. Threxus stood, his full height making him tower over the human ambassador. Cooperation? You speak as though you have something to offer as equals. But we are not equals, Ambassador. The Velkorian Empire is strong. Humanity is weak. That is the reality of this galaxy. Ji-Wan met his gaze without flinching. Strength takes many forms, Admiral. Military might is only one measure of a civilization's capability. A form of strength that you clearly lack, Commander Velna interjected. Your species has fewer than 30 worlds. No significant fleet. No defensive infrastructure. What other forms of strength do you claim to possess? Ji-Wan turned to look at the younger officer. The strength to choose our battles wisely. The strength to prepare for possibilities we hope never to face. The strength to remain hidden until the moment we are needed. Threxus laughed, a harsh grinding sound that echoed through the chamber. Hidden? You speak in riddles, Ambassador. If you possessed any real power, you would not need to hide. You would not need to come here pleading for peace. Ji-Wan took a deep breath. She had known this would be difficult. The Velkorians understood only force and domination. But she had to try. She had to give them one final chance to avoid what was coming. Admiral, she said quietly, for 400 years humanity has lived quietly in our corner of the galaxy. We have not sought conflict. We have not built empires. We have simply existed watching and learning. Do you not wonder why? Because you are cowards, Velna said with contempt. Because we are patient, Ji-Wan corrected. Because we understand that some weapons should never be used unless absolutely necessary. Because we hoped we would never need to reveal what we have built. Threxus returned to his throne. Empty threats do not become you, Ambassador. If you possessed weapons capable of challenging the Empire, you would have demonstrated them by now. Instead, you come here alone, unarmed, with nothing but words. Ji-Wan felt a deep sadness settle over her. She had tried. She had given them every opportunity to turn away. But pride and arrogance blinded them to the danger they were courting. Admiral Threxus, she said formally, I am authorized to make you one final offer. Withdraw your fleet from our borders. Establish a non-aggression treaty with humanity. In return, we will share certain technologies that will benefit your empire. We will trade fairly and honorably. We will cause you no harm, and if I refuse, then you will force us to defend ourselves, Ji-Wan said quietly. And you will discover what we have kept hidden for 4 centuries. Threxus waved a dismissive hand. I reject your offer, Ambassador. The Velkorian Empire does not negotiate with the weak. We conquer them. Commander Velna, escort the ambassador back to her shuttle. Ji-Wan bowed slightly, a gesture of respect despite the rejection. Then this is your final decision? It is. She straightened, looking the Admiral in the eye one last time. Then I must inform you that you have just made a terrible mistake, Admiral. I pray you realize it before too many of your people die. Velna gripped Ji-Wan's arm, not gently, and led her out of the chamber. The walk back to the shuttle was silent. The commander's expression was angry, but Ji-won also detected something else there. Uncertainty, perhaps, or the first whisper of doubt. At the airlock, Velna released her. "Your threats are empty, human. In 3 days, your worlds will belong to the Empire." Ji-won turned to face her. "They are not threats, Commander. They are warnings. There is a difference." She boarded the shuttle and Taeho immediately began the departure sequence. As they pulled away from the Eternal Fang, Ji-won looked back at the massive warship and the fleet beyond it. 10,000 vessels, each one capable of destroying a city. It was terrifying and impressive and utterly useless against what humanity had prepared. "Send the message," she told Taeho quietly. The pilot's hands moved across his controls, transmitting an encrypted signal back to human space. 3 words, nothing more. Diplomacy has failed. 12 hours later, the Velkorian fleet crossed into human territory. Their first target was Research Station Kepler, a small outpost on the border with a population of 300 scientists and support staff. Admiral Threxus gave the order personally: destroy it. The bombardment lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, Research Station Kepler was nothing but debris and frozen bodies tumbling through space. The Velkorian Empire had drawn first blood, and humanity, patient and watching, began to move. The HSS Revenant drifted in the darkness between stars, invisible to every sensor in the known galaxy. It was not a large ship by military standards, measuring only 800 meters from bow to stern. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in capability. The Revenant was humanity's most closely guarded secret, the result of 400 years of scientific research conducted in complete isolation. Captain Daewon Kim stood on the bridge, his dark eyes fixed on the main display screen. He was 42 years old, with black hair starting to show gray at the temples and the calm expression of someone who had trained their entire life for a single mission. Around him, his crew worked in silence, each person focused on their station. The message had arrived 3 hours ago. Encrypted, priority level maximum, transmitted from Ambassador Park's shuttle moments before the Velkorians destroyed Research Station Kepler. 3 words that changed everything. Diplomacy has failed. Daewon had expected those words eventually. He had hoped they would never come, but he had prepared for them nonetheless. Every member of his crew had prepared. They had trained in simulators and practiced scenarios and studied the theory until it was second nature. But theory and practice were different things. What they were about to do had never been attempted before. "Captain, we have confirmation," said Lieutenant Hyejin Choi from the weapons station. "Research Station Kepler is gone. 300 casualties. The Velkorian fleet is advancing deeper into our territory." Daewon nodded slowly. He had known many of the scientists at Kepler. Good people doing important work. Now they were dead, killed to make a point. The Velkorians wanted to demonstrate their power, to convince humanity that resistance was futile. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Status of the quantum cores?" Daewon asked. Hyejin checked her instruments. "All 12 cores are online and synchronized. Entanglement matrices are stable. Probability fields are at maximum coherence. We are ready to proceed whenever you give the order, sir." Daewon took a deep breath. The decision was his to make. Once Protocol Phantom was activated, there would be no going back. Humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again. He thought about the people at Research Station Kepler. He thought about the 30 human worlds that would be next if he did nothing. He thought about all the other species the Velkorians had conquered, crushed under the weight of their arrogance and cruelty. The choice was clear. "Activate Protocol Phantom," he said quietly. Hyejin's hands moved across her controls with practiced precision. Around the bridge, other crew members prepared their stations. The chief engineer in the reactor room began the power-up sequence. The navigation officer locked in the coordinates. The communications specialist opened encrypted channels. Everything humanity had built, everything they had learned, everything they had kept secret was about to be unleashed on an unsuspecting galaxy. The quantum cores began to hum, a sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. It was not a normal engine sound. It was something else, something that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The Revenant's unique power source was based on principles that most species had not even theorized about yet. Humanity had discovered quantum entanglement early in their technological development, but while other species used it only for communication, Human scientists had pushed further. They had learned to entangle not just particles but entire physical systems. They had learned to create probability fields that could manipulate the fundamental nature of reality itself. And then they had learned to do something that should have been impossible. They had learned to make a single object exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Not copies, not holograms. The actual ship, existing in 10,000 places at once, each instance as real and solid as any other. It was a violation of classical physics so profound that most scientists would have declared it impossible. But humanity had never been very good at accepting limitations. Quantum cores at 90%, Heejin reported. Entanglement web is spreading. We have locked onto the first 1,000 targets. 2,000, 5,000, 8,000. The targeting system was identifying every Valkorian warship in the galaxy, every vessel that belonged to their empire, from the massive dreadnoughts to the smallest patrol craft. The Revenant's quantum sensors could detect them all, tracking their unique energy signatures across vast distances. 10,000 targets acquired and locked, Heijin said. Probability matrices calculated and stored. We are ready for full deployment. Day One looked around the bridge at his crew. They were young, most of them. The oldest was barely 35, but they were the best humanity had to offer. They had been selected from thousands of candidates and trained for years. They knew what was at stake. This is it, he said. Once we activate the protocol, every Valkorian ship will detect us simultaneously. They will know we exist. They will know what we can do. There is no hiding after this. Does anyone have any objections? The bridge was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. They had all made their decision long before this moment. Very well, Day One said. He turned to Heejin. Lieutenant Choi, you may proceed. Yes, sir, she replied. Her finger hovered over the activation control for a moment. Then with steady pressure, she pressed it. The Revenant shuddered. It was a strange sensation, as if the ship was being pulled in 10,000 different directions at once. The lights flickered. The deck plates vibrated. For a moment, Day One felt as though he was in multiple places simultaneously. His consciousness stretched across the galaxy like a thread. Then the sensation passed. The lights stabilized. The vibration stopped. On the main display, a new map appeared. It showed the galaxy from a perspective that should have been impossible. Day One could see the Valkorian homeworld, the military academy, the shipyards, the conquered territories, every single location where a Valkorian vessel was present. And at each location, overlaying each ship was a single blue marker, HSS Revenant, Protocol Phantom is active. Heejin reported, her voice filled with quiet awe. We are reading as present at all 10,000 locations simultaneously. Quantum coherence is holding stable. Probability fields are maintaining integrity. Day One allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. The theory had become reality. A single human warship now existed everywhere the Valkorian Empire had a presence. They were surrounding the enemy's home world. They were at every military installation. They were beside every conquered planet. The Valkorians had wanted to demonstrate their power by destroying research station Kepler. Now humanity would demonstrate something far more terrifying. Not the power to destroy, but the power to be everywhere at once. The power to make the impossible real. Open all communication channels, Day One ordered. I want every Valkorian ship to receive this message simultaneously. Channels open, sir, the communications officer replied. You are broadcasting on all frequencies. Day One stepped forward, his image being transmitted to 10,000 different locations at once. He kept his expression cold and his voice steady. Attention, Valkorian Empire. This is Captain Day One Kim of the Human Stellar Navy, commanding the HSS Revenant. You were warned. Ambassador Park gave you every opportunity to choose peace. You chose war instead. You destroyed our research station. You killed our people. He paused, letting his words sink in. Now you face the consequences. Look at your sensors. Look at your radar. Look at every detection system you possess. You will see that my ship is present at every location where your empire has a military presence. This is not a trick. This is not a malfunction. We are actually here everywhere all at once. Another pause. Day One wanted them to check. He wanted them to verify. He wanted them to understand that what they were seeing was real. This is what humanity has built while you were conquering the weak and terrorizing the defenseless. This is why we remained hidden. This is the power we hope never to reveal. But you have forced our hand, and now you will reap what you have sown. He let the threat hang in the air, unspoken but clear. If one ship could be everywhere at once, it could strike everywhere at once. The entire Velkorian Empire was suddenly vulnerable in a way they had never imagined. Day One's final words were quiet, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. Your move, Admiral Threxus. The bridge of the Eternal Fang erupted into chaos. Alarms blared from every station. Officers shouted contradictory reports. Technicians frantically checked and rechecked their instruments, convinced their sensors had malfunctioned. Admiral Threxus gripped the armrests of his command throne, his four hands trembling with something he had not felt in decades. Fear. Commander Velna rushed to his side, her data tablet shaking in her hands. Admiral, the reports are confirmed. Every ship in the fleet is detecting the same target. The human vessel designated Revenant is appearing on all sensors simultaneously. That is impossible, Threxus said, but his voice lacked conviction. He could see the evidence on his own tactical display, a single blue marker overlaying the position of every Velkorian ship in the galaxy, thousands upon thousands of detection points all showing the same impossible result. The communications officer turned from his station, his face pale. Admiral, we are receiving reports from the homeworld. The Revenant is in orbit above the capital. Our planetary defense systems have confirmed a solid contact. It is not a sensor ghost. The ship is physically present. Threxus felt his world tilting. And our fleet positions? The same, sir. Fleet Command reports the Revenant is present at every major naval installation. It is surrounding our shipyards. It is beside every battle group. It is monitoring every conquered world. Velna pulled up another display, her movements frantic. The military academies reporting contact. Our research facilities are reporting contact. Even our deep space outposts are detecting the human ship. Threxus tried to process the information, but his mind kept rejecting it. 2 centuries of military experience told him this was impossible. You could not be in multiple locations at once. Space and time did not work that way. There had to be an explanation, a trick, a technology he did not understand. But what kind of technology could fool every sensor system in the Empire simultaneously? What kind of power could create the illusion of physical presence in 10,000 different locations? Unless it was not an illusion. The thought sent ice through his veins. If the humans had actually found a way to exist in multiple places at once, if they had broken the fundamental laws of physics that governed reality, then everything had changed. The Velkorian Empire's strength meant nothing against an enemy who could be everywhere. Sir, the sensor officer called out, his voice cracking with stress, we are attempting active scans of the contact near our position. The results are consistent with a physical vessel. Mass readings match an 800-meter warship. Hull composition is unknown but definitely solid matter. Fire a warning shot, Threxus ordered. Target the space 10 kilometers from the contact. I want to see if it reacts. The weapons officer hesitated. Sir, if we fire at one position, we need to consider that the ship might be connected across all instances. An attack in one location could trigger a response in all locations. Threxus had not considered that possibility. If the ship truly existed everywhere at once, then any action taken against it might be replicated across every instance. A single warning shot could become 10,000 warning shots. A declaration of hostility in one place would be a declaration in all places. The strategic implications were staggering. The Velkorian fleet was the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, but what good was power when it was scattered across thousands of light years? The humans did not need to match their numbers. They only needed one ship that could be everywhere. A new message came through on the main communication channel. It was Captain Kim again, his face appearing on every screen in the Empire. Threxus forced himself to watch, to listen, to understand what he was facing. Admiral Threxus, the human captain said, his voice calm and controlled. I know what you are thinking. You are trying to determine if this is real. You are wondering if we have truly broken the laws of physics as you understand them. Let me save you the trouble of speculation. The display changed, showing technical readouts and quantum equations that made Threxus's head hurt. We call this technology quantum omnipresence, Kim continued. Through a combination of entanglement matrices and probability manipulation, we have learned to place our vessel in a state of simultaneous existence. We are not in 10,000 places. We are in one place that happens to overlap with 10,000 positions in normal spacetime. Threxus barely understood half the words, but he understood the conclusion. The humans had mastered something that should have been impossible. "I tell you this," Kim said, "not to boast, but to make you understand the situation you are in. My ship can strike any target in your empire without warning. We can be at your homeworld and your furthest outpost simultaneously. You cannot defend against us because we are already past your defenses." The image changed again, this time showing Research Station Kepler as it had looked before the attack. Happy scientists going about their work, families in the residential section, children playing in the observation deck. "You killed these people," Kim said, and for the first time there was emotion in his voice. Anger. Grief. 300 human beings who had done nothing to harm you. You murdered them to demonstrate your power. The display showed the station's destruction played back from sensor recordings. The bombardment. The explosions. The debris field spreading into space. "Now I will demonstrate ours," Kim said quietly. Threxus felt his heart's hammering in his chest. This was it. The humans were going to retaliate. They were going to strike back with their impossible technology and show the Velkorian Empire what real power looked like. But Kim surprised him. "However, unlike you, we do not murder the innocent to make a point. Watch your sensors, Admiral. We are going to move, all of us, simultaneously." On the tactical display, every instance of the Revenant began to shift position. Not randomly, but in perfect synchronization. The ship that surrounded the Velkorian homeworld moved into a higher orbit. The ships beside the battle groups repositioned themselves to optimal firing angles. The ships at the shipyards aligned their weapons with the construction facilities. 10,000 ships moving as one. 10,000 positions changing in perfect coordination. It was a demonstration of control that defied everything Threxus knew about fleet operations. "Do you understand now?" Kim asked. "We could destroy your empire in minutes. Every ship, every station, every installation. We could strike them all simultaneously before you could mount any defense. Your fleet would be crippled before the first shot was fired." Threxus could not deny it. The tactical reality was clear. The Velkorian Empire, for all its power and pride, was completely vulnerable. They had built their strength on numbers and firepower, but the humans had rendered both advantages meaningless. "But we will not do that," Kim continued, and his voice softened slightly, "because unlike you, we do not seek conquest. We seek only to be left in peace. Ambassador Park tried to explain this to you. She offered you trade and cooperation. You rejected her and chose violence." The captain leaned forward, his expression hard. "Now you have one chance to avoid complete destruction. Withdraw your fleet from human space immediately. Release all the territories you have conquered. Sign a non-aggression treaty with every species you have subjugated. And submit to human oversight of your military operations." Velna gasped. "Sir, those terms are unacceptable. They are demanding our complete surrender." Threxus raised a hand to silence her. He understood what was happening. The humans were not asking. They were telling. They held all the power now and they knew it. "You have 12 hours to comply," Kim said. "If you do not, we will disable your entire fleet. We will not kill your crews if we can avoid it, but we will render every warship in your empire unable to function. You will be defenseless, powerless, at the mercy of all the species you have conquered." He paused, letting the threat sink in. "Or you can choose peace. You can accept our terms and begin the process of making amends for your crimes. The choice is yours, Admiral. Choose wisely." The transmission ended. The bridge of the Eternal Fang fell silent. Every officer, every technician, every soldier present understood what had just happened. The Velkorian Empire, undefeated for 200 years, had just been given an ultimatum by a species they had dismissed as weak, and they had no choice but to accept it. Threxus sat back in his command throne, suddenly feeling every one of his 60 cycles of age. He had led the Empire to countless victories. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had believed himself invincible, but he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy who could be everywhere at once. An enemy who had the power to destroy but chose mercy. An enemy who had outsmarted them from the very beginning. "Contact Fleet Command," he said quietly. "Inform them that I am recommending full acceptance of the human terms." Velna stared at him in shock. "Sir, we have no other option, Commander," Threxus said, his voice heavy with defeat. "The humans have won. They won before the war even started. We just did not know it until now." The Valkorian Empire collapsed with surprising speed. Within 6 hours of Captain Kim's ultimatum, Admiral Threxus transmitted his unconditional acceptance of all human terms. Within 12 hours, Valkorian warships began withdrawing from conquered territories across the galaxy. Within 24 hours, the empire that had dominated this region of space for 2 centuries was effectively dismantled. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. News networks across 100 worlds struggled to explain what had happened. One day, the Valkorians had seemed unstoppable. The next day, they were retreating on all fronts, their military command in disarray, their government issuing apologies to species they had brutalized for generations. And everywhere, on every sensor screen, on every radar display, the HSS Revenant remained visible, a constant reminder of the power that had brought the Empire to its knees without firing a single shot. Captain Daewon Kim stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the tactical display as Valkorian forces completed their withdrawal from the last human border system. It had been 3 days since he activated Protocol Phantom, 3 days during which the Revenant had maintained its quantum omnipresence, existing in 10,000 locations simultaneously. It was exhausting. Not physically, but mentally. The ship's systems handled the technical challenges automatically, but Daewon could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Every decision he made was replicated across 10,000 instances. Every word he spoke was heard in 10,000 locations. "Sir," Lieutenant Hyejin Choi reported, "the last Valkorian vessel has crossed the border. All human space is clear of hostile forces." Daewon nodded. "Very well. Begin the shutdown sequence. Deactivate Protocol Phantom." Hyejin's hands moved across her controls. The quantum cores began to power down, their strange humming fading to silence. The probability fields collapsed. The entanglement matrices dissolved, and slowly, carefully, the Revenant stopped being everywhere and returned to being in just one place. The transition felt strange, like waking from a vivid dream. One moment, Daewon could sense his ship's presence across the entire galaxy. The next moment, he was just in one location, a small vessel floating in empty space. It should have felt limiting, but instead it felt like relief. "Protocol Phantom is offline," Hyejin confirmed. "All quantum cores are in standby mode. We are reading as a single vessel again." Across the galaxy, sensors that had shown 10,000 instances of the Revenant now showed only one, or perhaps none, since the ship's stealth systems were once again active. Either way, the demonstration was over. Humanity had revealed its secret, shown its power, and then gracefully withdrawn. But the impact would last far longer than the 3 days of Protocol Phantom's activation. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Jiwon Park stood before the Galactic Council, addressing representatives from 200 different species. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with seating arranged in rising tiers. It reminded her of an ancient amphitheater, and in a way that was appropriate. This was a place where voices echoed and history was made. She had been invited to explain humanity's actions and intentions. Some species were grateful that the Valkorians had been stopped. Others were terrified of what humanity might do with such power. All of them wanted answers. "Esteemed delegates," Jiwon began, her voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "I stand before you today to address the concerns that many of you have expressed regarding humanity and our recent intervention in Valkorian expansion." She paused, looking around the chamber at the diverse collection of beings. Some were humanoid. Others were radically different, with body structures and sensory systems that would seem alien to human eyes. But they all shared one thing in common. They were all watching her with a mixture of hope and fear. 400 years ago, Jiwon continued, humanity made a decision. We had developed faster than light travel and found ourselves in a galaxy filled with other civilizations. We saw empires rising and falling. We saw wars of conquest. We saw species enslaved and worlds destroyed, and we chose not to participate in that cycle. We withdrew to a quiet corner of space and focused on development rather than expansion. We built our technology not for conquest but for defense. We hoped that by remaining hidden we would never need to use what we were creating. A delegate from the Crystalline Collective rose to speak, his voice like wind chimes. "But you did use it, Ambassador. You demonstrated power beyond anything we have seen. How can we trust that you will not use that power to dominate us as the Valkorians did?" Jiwon met his crystalline gaze steadily. "Because we could have and we did not. We had the Valkorian Empire at our mercy. We could have destroyed their fleet, occupied their worlds, taken control of their government. Instead, we demanded only that they stop their aggression and make amends to their victims. Another delegate spoke up, this one from a species that had suffered under Velcorian rule. What guarantee do we have that humanity will not change its mind in the future? Power corrupts, as we have learned many times. Jiwan nodded. A fair question. I cannot offer you absolute guarantees because such things do not exist. But I can tell you this. Humanity has no interest in empire. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We do not want to rule over anyone. What we want is simple. We want to live in peace. We want to trade freely. We want to share knowledge and culture with species who are willing to do the same. And we want to ensure that no one else suffers as the Velcorians' victims have suffered. She pulled out a data tablet and held it up. To that end, humanity is offering to share our defensive technologies with any species that requests them, not our quantum omnipresence technology, which requires resources and expertise that most civilizations do not possess. But we can provide advanced shield systems, sensor arrays, and tactical coordination protocols. The chamber erupted in surprised murmurs. Several delegates stood to speak at once, their voices overlapping in confusion and excitement. Jiwan raised a hand for quiet. These technologies will be provided freely, with no strings attached and no demands for payment or loyalty. Our only requirement is that they be used for defense, not aggression. Species that attempt to use human technology for conquest will find that we have built certain limitations into the systems. It was a calculated gamble. By sharing defensive technology, humanity would make itself indispensable to galactic security. They would create a network of species who relied on human systems and thus had a vested interest in maintaining good relations. But they would also be demonstrating genuine goodwill, showing that their intentions were as peaceful as they claimed. The Galactic Council debated for hours. Some species were skeptical, others were enthusiastic. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Humanity would be welcomed as a full member of the galactic community, and their offer of defensive technology would be accepted. As Jiwan left the chamber, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They had done it. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage not as conquerors but as protectors, not as masters but as partners. Far away in a detention facility on the Velcorian homeworld, Admiral Threxus watched the news broadcasts from his cell. He had been stripped of his rank and command, tried for war crimes, and sentenced to life imprisonment. His empire was gone. His career was over. His legacy would be one of failure and defeat. He watched as the galaxy transformed. Species that had lived in fear now formed mutual defense pacts. Worlds that had been conquered were rebuilding with human assistance. The new order was based on cooperation rather than domination, partnership rather than subjugation. And everywhere, in every discussion and every negotiation, there was the unspoken understanding. Humanity was watching. The species that could be everywhere at once, that could appear on every radar simultaneously, was the ultimate guarantor of peace. Threxus clicked his mandibles bitterly. He had believed the Velcorian Empire invincible. He had dismissed humanity as weak and irrelevant. He had made every wrong choice possible. But perhaps he thought in his darker moments he had served a purpose. His aggression had forced humanity to reveal itself. His arrogance had brought about the end of an era of conquest. His failure had created the space for something better to emerge. It was small comfort, but it was something. Meanwhile, aboard the HSS Revenant, Captain Dae-Won Kim prepared his ship for a new mission. They would no longer hide in the shadows. Instead, they would patrol the border regions, responding to distress calls and deterring aggression through their mere presence. Lieutenant Hyejin Choi approached him on the bridge, a slight smile on her face. "Sir, I have been reviewing the sensor logs from our protocol Phantom activation. Did you know that we set a record? No other vessel in galactic history has been detected in more than 3 locations simultaneously." Dae-Won chuckled. "I suppose 10,000 locations is a bit of an achievement." "More than a bit, sir. Some of the scientific community are calling it the most significant breakthrough in physics in 1,000 years. He nodded thoughtfully. "And how many of them are asking us to explain how it works?" "All of them, sir." Dae-Won smiled. "Then I suppose they will have to keep asking. Some secrets are worth keeping, at least for now." The Revenant turned toward the outer rim, its engines humming softly. Behind it, the galaxy was changing. Empires were falling.